The complete works of Swami Vivekananda, Vedanta and its application to Indian life, Part 2. However it might have been, the word Vedanta must cover the whole ground of Indian religious life. And being part of the Vedas, by all acceptance, it is the most ancient literature that we have. For whatever might be the idea of modern scholars, the Hindus are not ready to admit that parts of the Vedas are written at one time and parts were written at another time. They, of course, still hold on to their belief that the Vedas as a whole were produced at the same time. Rather, if I may say so, that they were never produced, but that they always existed in the mind of the Lord. This is what I mean by the word Vedanta, that it covers the ground of the dualism, of qualified monoism, and of Advaitism in India. Perhaps we may even take in parts of Buddhism and of Jainism too, if they would come in, for our hearts are sufficiently large. But it is that they will not come in. We are ready for, upon severe analysis, you will always find that the essence of Buddhism was all borrowed from the same Upanishads. Even the ethics, the so-called great and wonderful ethics of Buddhism, were there word for word in some or other of the Upanishads. And so all the good doctrines of the Jains were there, minus their vagaries. In the Upanishads also, we find the germs of all the subsequent development of Indian religious thought. Sometimes it has been urged, without any ground whatsoever, that there is no ideal of bhakti in the Upanishads. Those that have been the students of the Upanishads know that it is not true at all. There is enough of bhakti in every Upanishad if you will only seek for it. But many of the ideas which are found so fully developed in later times in the Puranas and other Smritis are only in the germs in the Upanishads. The sketch, the skeleton, was there as it were. It was fulfilled in some of the Puranas. But there is not one full-grown Indian ideal that cannot be traced back to the same source, the Upanishads. Certain ludicrous attempts have been made by persons without much Upanishadic scholarship to trace bhakti to some foreign source. But, as you know, these have all been proved to be failures. And all that you want of bhakti is there, even in the Samhitas, not to speak of the Upanishads. It is their worship and love and all the rest of it. Only the ideals of bhakti are becoming higher and higher. In the Samhita portions now and then, you will find traces of a religion of fear and tribulation. In the Samhitas now and then, you will find a worshipper quaking before a Varuna or some other god. Now and then you will find they were very much tortured by the idea of sin. But the Upanishads have no place for the delineation of these things. There is no religion of fear in the Upanishads. It is one of love and one of knowledge.